Let your breathing slow, and let the galaxy grow quiet. Tonight I am going to tell you about the death of a world. But do not be afraid. It is a sad story, yes, but it is also one of the most beautiful in all of this dark future. A story of a single small planet that stood for 10,000 years between humanity and the abyss, and of the long, brave, doomed night when at last it fell. This is the fall of Cadia. Rest now, and let me tell it gently. Far out at the edge of the Imperium, beside a great and terrible wound in the sky, there was a world called Cadia. It was not a beautiful world. It was grey and hard and cold. But it was, perhaps, the most important world in the entire galaxy. For Cadia stood beside the Eye of Terror, a vast, endless storm where the warp and the real have torn together and never healed. A place from which the armies of chaos pour out to ravage the worlds of mankind. And Cadia guarded the only safe road through it, the only gate. Hold Cadia, and you hold back the dark, so the people of Cadia were born to a single purpose. From the moment a Cadian child could walk, they were taught to fight, to strip and clean a weapon before they could read, to hold a line and never break. For 10,000 years, they were the shield of humanity, the finest soldiers the Imperium ever raised, standing watch beside the storm, generation after generation, knowing that one day it would come for them. And on their cold, grey world stood something stranger still. Great black pillars, taller than mountains, older than mankind, raised in some forgotten age. The pylons. No one truly knew how they worked, but while they stood, they held the storm at bay. They kept the eye from spreading. They were the true secret of Cadia's long defiance. And across the storm, for all those long centuries, an enemy was waiting. His name was Abaddon, the despoiler, the chosen champion of all the powers of chaos, the dark inheritor of that first great traitor, Horus, from 10,000 years before. 12 times across the ages, Abaddon had led his black fleets out of the Eye to break the Imperium. 12 times, Cadia and its defenders had thrown him back into the dark. 12 black crusades, 12 defeats, and each time his hatred for that one small, stubborn world grew deeper. And then, at last, he came again. A 13th time. But this time, he came with everything. The 13th Black Crusade was the greatest assault the Imperium had faced in 10,000 years. Out of the Eye poured a tide of darkness without end. Traitor legions older than memory, demon things from beyond the world, war engines vast as cities. And Cadia met them as it always had. The Cadians dug into their trenches and their fortress lines, and they held. They held against odds that should have broken them in an hour. They held for days, and then for weeks. They held while their cities burned and their skies filled with fire. They held because they were Cadian, and holding was the only thing they had ever known how to do. And across the galaxy, the Imperium sent everything it could to help them, fleets and armies and heroes. For everyone understood, in their bones, what it would mean if Cadia fell. And still the Cadians fought, in the mud and the ash, for every meter of their cold, grey world, sending out, again and again, across the burning dark, the same 3 defiant words. Cadia stands, Cadia stands, Cadia stands. But Abaddon had learned, across 10,000 years, the one way to win. He knew he could not simply conquer Cadia. He had tried 12 times. So this time he struck at its secret heart, at the pylons, the ancient pillars that held the storm at bay. He took one of his greatest weapons, a fortress of black stone the size of a moon, and he sent it falling, down through the burning sky, like a single terrible star, to crash upon the surface of the world itself. And the pylons broke. In that instant, the thing that had held back the storm for uncounted ages was gone. And the Eye of Terror, no longer caged, came pouring in. The very ground of Cadia began to come apart. The skies tore open. The warp and the real bled together across the whole of the dying world. And Cadia, the fortress that had stood for 10,000 years, at last began to fall. The order came to flee, to save what could be saved. And even then, even as their world tore itself apart beneath them, the Cadians fought their way to the ships through fire and shadow, carrying their wounded, carrying their banners, refusing to the very last to simply break and run. They had a saying in the end, those who survived. They said, Cadia stands, even though it doesn't, because Cadia was never really the rock, or the pylons, or the grey cold ground. Cadia was the people, and the people stood, even as the world died beneath their feet. When it was over, Cadia was gone, swallowed whole by the storm it had guarded for so long. And from the wound where it had stood, a great tear ripped its way across the entire galaxy, a vast scar of warp light splitting the Imperium nearly in two, plunging half of mankind's worlds into a darkness deeper than any they had known. It was, without question, the worst hour in 10,000 years of the Imperium's long history. The shield had fallen, the gate was open, the dark had come in. And yet, it was not the end. It is never quite the end. For out of that same darkest hour came old heroes, long thought lost, returning at last. New hope, kindled from the ashes, and the survivors of Cadia, scattered now across the stars, a people without a world, carried their grief and their banners and their cold, unbreakable courage out into the wider galaxy. And they did not stop fighting. They never have. To this day, somewhere out there, the sons and daughters of a dead world stand watch in its memory and whisper its name and refuse still to break. So let us remember Cadia tonight, gently, the way you might remember something brave and beautiful and long ago. A small grey world at the edge of the storm. A people who were born to stand and who stood for 10,000 years so that the rest of humanity could sleep. They did not save themselves in the end. But they were never really trying to. They were trying to save everyone else, and in that, even in falling, they did not fail. You can let them rest now, and you can let yourself rest too. The watch they kept for so long is being kept still by others far away in the dark. There is nothing left tonight for you to hold, or guard, or fear. The line is somewhere else now, and you are safe and warm and free to close your eyes. Cadia stands. In memory, it always will. The Emperor protects. Rest now, and sleep well.